Thank you for joining my lecture. Today, I talk about anti-Russian and pro-Russian nations in Eastern Europe. Anti-Russian nations in Eastern Europe. Poland. In the third partition of Poland in 1795, Poland was divided and wiped out by Russia, Prussia, and Austria. When World War II began, Poland was occupied by Nazi Germany in the west and the Soviet Union in the east. Katyn massacre. During World War II, the Soviet army massacred more than 20,000 Polish soldiers and civilians in the Katyn forest. From the war until 1989, the Soviet Union had been attributing Katyn massacre to Nazi Germany. But in 1990, the General Secretary of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev, admitted that it was the Soviet Union's crime and apologized to Poland. The Palace of Culture and Science is built by Stalin of the Soviet Union in Warsaw, the capital of Poland. When I asked Paul what is the best place to see Warsaw, he replied, "The view from the Palace of Culture and Science is the most wonderful. This is because we don't have to see the Palace of Culture and Science, thus the anti-Russian sentiment of the Poles is very strong." After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it has historically experienced the invasion, and Poland's defense spending, which directly borders Russia, is more than 3%. Czech Republic. In 1968, under the slogan "Socialism with a Human Face," the first secretary of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia, Dubček, carried out democratization called the Prague Spring, but it was crushed by the intervention of the Soviet army. Later, the Soviet General Secretary Brezhnev justified the Soviet military intervention in Czechoslovakia by the Brezhnev Doctrine, which stated that the interests of the entire socialist nations took precedence over the interests of one nation. Because of this background, the anti-Russian sentiment of the Czechs is deep-rooted. Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Originally, Baltic states were influenced by Western Europe. However, Baltic states have a history of being forcibly annexed by the Soviet Union in 1940 during World War II. So anti-Russian sentiment is so strong that when foreigners spoke to the people of the Baltic states in Russian during the Soviet era, they were told to speak in English. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the defense expenditure of Estonia and Latvia, the Baltic states that directly border Russia, has increased by more than 3%, and Lithuania's defense expenditure has also increased by 2.49%. Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine are very close ethnically, linguistically, and religiously, and have a common history and culture. However, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, anti-Russian sentiment has become decisive. Pro-Russian nations in Eastern Europe. Bulgaria. Bulgaria, which is a Slavic people like Russia, that has been oppressed by the Ottoman Empire of the Muslim and believes in the Christian Orthodox Church, has historically received support from Russia, so it is favorable to Russia. In Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, stands a bronze Exturian statue of the Russian Emperor Alexander II, who liberated Bulgaria from the rule of the Ottoman Empire. Serbia. In 1999, during the Kosovo conflict, Serbia was hit by an airstrike by NATO forces, so Serbia is anti-Western and pro-Russian. In addition, Croatia in the former Yugoslavia is a member of the EU, while Serbia is not a member of the EU. In summary, many Eastern European nations that directly border Russia have anti-Russian sentiment due to their historical background of being invaded by Russia. On the other hand, Christian Orthodox nations which do not directly border Russia and have been under pressure from the Muslim Ottoman Empire tend to have pro-Russian sentiment because they have historically received support from Russia. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel to maintain these educational activities. I'm looking forward to seeing you again.